In this video, we are going to go through a couple examples of using if statements in MATLAB. So I'm going to start with problem 1 from chapter 4 in the textbook. So this problem says to write a function with the header tip is equal to my tip calc. Two inputs, bill and party, where bill is the total cost of a meal and party is the number of people in the group. So this book is a little outdated. I think these tip prices that we're about to go over are a little low, but you know, it's what the book says. So the tip should be calculated as 15% for a party strictly less than 6 people, 18% for a party strictly less than 8, 20% for a party less than 11, and 25% for a party of 11 or more. So we have our header line function. We have tip is equal to my tip calc of bill, comma, party. And I'm going to leave some notes here. So we're tipping 15% for less than 6 people. We're tipping 18% for less than 8 people in our party. We're tipping 20% for less than 11 people and 25% for greater than or equal to, greater than or equal to, 11 people. Okay, so again, I do not endorse these tip prices. I was a waitress for a while, so anyway, this is going to help us do an if statement here. So let's start. We can do this I was going to say one of two ways, but there's actually multiple ways that we can do this. For a lot of our codes, there are so many different ways to write the code. We could start, on this end and work this way. We could start on this end and work this way. We could have different if statements. We can have all in one kind of if, else if statement, which is what I'm going to do. But just know I code these examples one way, but that's not the only way to do it, which is one reason that I like for us to do group work in this class, is so you can see kind of all the different ways that you can code things, because we're not all going to come up with the same answers. So I'm going to start with my if statement. So if, and we're checking party. So if party is less than 6, then I'm going to do something. Typically, when I write my if statements, I like to write it kind of the bones of them and then go in and fill them in. So now I'm going to have an else if party is less than 8 people. So what this means is party is, because this first one was false, so party is greater than or equal to 6 and less than 8. And we're going to have an else if party is less than 11. So that means this first one was false. The second one is false. So this means party is greater than or equal to 8 and is also less than 11. That's the only way we're going to end up in this, is if this is false, and this is true. And then I'm just going to have an else statement. We could do an else if it's greater than or equal to 11, but if this is false, and this is false, then we know that party is greater than or equal to 11. And then I'm going to have an end here. So if the party is less than 6, then our tip is going to equal 15% of the bill. So 0.15 times the bill. Putting a semicolon there to suppress that output. If we have more than 6 6 or more people and less than 8 people, then our tip is going to equal to 18%, 0.18 times the bill. If we have less than 11 people but greater than or equal to 8 people, then our tip is going to equal to 20% of the bill. You're getting more in the correct tipping range there. And then if we have more than 11 people, 11 or more people, our tip is going to be 25%. Okay, I'm gonna save this. And I should have really saved that earlier. As soon as I wrote the header line, I should have saved it just in case, my computer shuts down. I always want to save kind of as I'm going. So that was a very bad practice, not save until the very end. So I'm going to save this. I'm going to minimize this so that I can go to my command window here. And I'm going to type the test cases. So the book is great. It has lots of test cases for these example problems. Your labs will also have test cases so you can make sure that your code is working. So T is my tip calc. We have 109.29. We have 3 people. And our tip is 1639.35. Or sorry, 16.3935. If we have that same bill, but instead it's between 7 people, our tip is going to be 1967. And then if we have this between 12 people, it's going to be 2732. So because this is a number, we're not really rounding to make it look like it's money. We could print out an amount or text that says your tip amount is this, which let's go through how we would do that. So below here, I'm going to use an fprintf, which let's go to help, fprintf. I think this one's long. Okay, so here, fprintf. So we're gonna have a format, returns a number, okay. Formats, data, and displays the results on the screen. So that's what we're gonna do here. So we're gonna use this second usage. I'm gonna write your tip amount is, and then I want tip to go there, but this is text. So I'm not gonna put tip because then it's just gonna print your tip amount is tip. So instead I'm going to tell the computer that I want a floating point double precision number, which is %f. What this means is that we're gonna put a variable number in there. I want it to have 2 digits behind the decimal point. It's also money, so I'm gonna put a $sign in front of it. It's okay if you don't have this perfectly. Typically when I ask you to print like this, I help you out with this line. But this %f means we're gonna put something in there. And what we're gonna put in there is what comes next, tip. And we could add a second one. So your tip amount is this, which means your total amount is, we're gonna do this again. But for the second input, it's gonna be tip plus bill. So let's run this and see how it goes. So CIC, using that previous example, says your tip amount is 2732, which means your total amount is 136.61. And then it still did our output because I didn't put a semicolon here. If I put a semicolon here, then it's just going to print out that text. So let's look at that one more time. Also, I encourage you to ask questions directly below this video. That's if you're in Canvas. So if you're in Canvas, you can ask questions directly below the video in the comments section. If you're on YouTube watching the video, just navigate to Canvas and ask the questions there. So your tip amount is this %F, %.2F means put a number here that has two digits behind the decimal point, and that number is going to be this first variable here. Here we're going to put a different number, and it's going to be this number here. Okay, let's go through another example. So I'm going to start a new script. For this one, I'm going to call function. Let's do capital DT. So we're back to our determinant, 2, 3 of A. So this function, we're going to calculate the determinant of a 2 by 2 or 3 by 3 matrix. If matrix A is not 2 by 2 or 3 by 3, there should be an error. Okay, so looking at this page here or looking back to the previous module, the determinant for a 2 by 2 matrix is going to be this number times this number minus this number times this number. So we already have a function that does that, and we're going to use what's in that function to help us out. A 3 by 3 matrix is a little bit more complicated. It's going to be this A times this minus, so E times I minus F times H. And then that's going to be minus B times D times I minus F times G plus C times D times H minus E times G. So we're going to be using this equation right here. If you don't know what the determinant is, that's okay. We're basically going to be plugging and chugging into this equation. Once again, there are multiple ways to do this. If I have a error like this for my input, I typically like to put that at the very beginning of my code. So I'm just going to put an if statement here. So if, well, first I need to calculate the size of my matrix. So I'm going to say RC is equal to size of A. No, R and C are those output variables. R is the number of rows, C is the number of columns. I like my variable names to be descriptive enough so that I can remember what they are, but not so descriptive that it takes a lot of time to type them out. So you could also do row call like that, so that's not too hard to type out, but I wouldn't make them too much longer. Otherwise, you might get tired of typing them out again and again. So we're going to check if the matrix is not 2 by 2 or 3 by 3, have an error. So we're going to say if row is not equal to 2, or how do I want to do this? This is why you should draw a flowchart instead of just kind of taking off. So I'm actually going to do this a different way, where I'm going to start with checking if it's 2 by 2 and then checking if it's 3 by 3, and then in my else statement I'm going to have an error. Okay, so pulling up my equations here. So first I'm going to say if row, so here we're going to check if it's a 2 by 2. So if row is equal to 2 and column is equal to 2, so we put 2 equal signs, which means that we're checking, is row equal to 2? Is column equal to 2? If both of those things are true, so this and means both statements must be true, then we're going to use the equation where our determinant is going to equal A11 times A22 minus A12 times A21. So we did that last time in our function that we wrote in the previous module. So if our matrix A is not 2 by 2, so else if, we're going to check if it's 3 by 3. So if row is equal to 3 and column is equal to 3, then our determinant is equal to, so we're going to have A11 times, this is going to be a lot longer of an equation, so we have A11 times A second row, second column times A33 minus A, so second row, third column times A third column, or second row, third column times A, this is a mess, A third row, second column. Close that parentheses. And then we're going to have a minus. I'm going to put a dot, dot, dot here, which means that I can continue the line below this on the next line. If you're using a small font size, you don't need to do this. It's just because my font size is kind of large. So I'm going to put a dot, 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 and a dot, 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 which means continue this line here. So in here we're going to have A, uh-oh, maybe I don't put the dot, dot, dot there. Okay, sorry, I just put the dot, dot, dot here. So we're going to have A first row, second column times A second row, first column times A third row, third column minus A second row, third column times A third row, first column. And that's going to be plus we're going to have A first row, third column times A second row, first column times A third row, second column minus A second row, second column times A third row, first column. Okay, I think that should be right. I'm going to put a semicolon there. Just checking it. So 2, 2 times 3, 3 minus 2, 3 times 3, 2. Yeah, it's looking pretty good. You can always go back and edit it. So else, this is where our matrix, so A is not 2 by 2 or 3 by 3. So both of these are false. And we end up with else. So else, I'm going to have an error message that says matrix, size of matrix entered is not valid. Please enter a 2 by 2 or 3 by 3 matrix. So I'm going to save this. Once again, I should have saved that earlier. And let's do the CLC. I'm going to put in a matrix here. So 6, 1, 1, 4, -2, 5, 2, 8, 7. I'm going to do determinant 2, 3 of C. And that gives me -306, which is the determinant for that matrix. Let's try putting in a 2 by 2. So we have 4, 6, 3, 8. And let's try determinant 23 of A. It should be 14, which it is. So looking back at this example, so we first calculate the size of the matrix, then we check if it's 2 by 2. If it is, we calculate the determinant of a 2 by 2 matrix. It's 3 by 3, then we use the equation to calculate a determinant of a 3 by 3. Otherwise, we send an error. And these dot dot dots here are just so that I can extend the same line of code to the next line. We could just as easily take those out and have one very long line of code. So it's up to you. I typically don't use a dot 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 unless I'm teaching and presenting a code and people are following along. When I'm coding by myself, I would code it like this, all in one line. But it's really just a style preference. I'm going to add one more comment here. So here we're checking if it's 3 by 3. It's important that we keep our codes well commented. Okay, so now if I can just find where my recording thing is so I can stop recording my video.